In this video, I'd just like to discuss a few course logistics. Okay, so this I might edit a little bit, but you will be able to link to this course information sheet from my website. Um, in particular, I want to review a few things. So the textbook we'll be using is the same one that you used in Math 111L if you took this in the past fall. It's calculus, it's the 7th edition. I do, however, want to point out, since we recently transitioned from the 6th edition, if you have the 6th edition or you can access it in some way, that is completely fine. You'll see that I list some homework problems from the text, but I can provide you with like a conversion. If I'm listing the 7th edition problem, we can figure out what that would be in the 6th edition. Um, so I have here the course website, which I'm going to email to you all. That's going to be really the home base. That's going to be where we have the schedule for everything. You're going to be able to access the lecture videos there. And you can also link to the two websites I have here, Piazza, which I would just use for a discussion forum. We are kind of transitioning where the university is not going to purchase a license. So you might see an ask for a contribution on there, which feel free to ignore that. That's just because we don't have a license to it. And then Gradescope is going to be the place that you submit everything that's going to be graded in this course. If you're not familiar with that, it should become pretty easy to use. I will add all of you to both of those sites so that you should be able to access that. The asynchronous lectures you want to watch on your own time, but again, they are scheduled in the sense that certain discussions will be based off of certain lecture videos. So you want to be sure that you watch those in advance of the discussion section in question. Those are going to be posted on my website. I'll have them on YouTube, so you can just link to those. And keep in mind that more often than not, I think people might think that the pace is a little slow, and you can always increase the speed of that. But those are going to be provided on the website. And then importantly, we have the synchronous discussions. I have a whole separate video devoted just to talking about discussions, so I won't say much about that here, but please do watch the other video so that you know exactly what to expect and what we expect from you. So importantly, probably a question that many of you have is about the grading. One real big difference about this course from previous years is that it is mandatory SU this semester. So there are lots of reasons why we wanted to do that, but of course, primarily this is because of this remote learning and the complications related to COVID. But I do want to be very clear about what it means to earn an S. I know that there was some confusion about this in the Calc 2 course I taught in the fall. So to be clear, there are going to be 3 graded categories that I'll discuss in a moment. And in order to earn an S, you have to have at least a 70% average on each of those categories. So that does not mean that you just average all of your points together. There are 3 separate categories, and that you have to have a 70% at least on all 3 categories. So that was the biggest confusion it seemed that people had before. So you could have 100% on 2 categories, and the third category is below a 70%. That's going to translate to a U. So what are these categories? Excuse me. One of them is lecture quizzes. So after you watch the videos, but before your discussion section meets, you want to take the associated lecture quiz. That's going to be on Gradescope. You'll see on the schedule on my website that it's linked. You can click on the line that says lecture quiz. It'll take you to Gradescope. You have to click on the appropriate quiz. These are, unlike the other things, these are things that are written into Gradescope so that it's automatically graded on Gradescope. You don't have to upload anything. You're actually answering that online. These consist of 10 questions. If you've watched the videos, I expect that it would take you maybe 10 minutes, but you'll typically have about 5 days to work through them. Again, something that I really want to stress here is the due date. All 9 sections have the same Gradescope. So I set Gradescope deadlines to reflect so that the latest group has time to get theirs in. So you need to ignore the Gradescope deadlines for lecture quizzes, because your lecture quiz is due before the start of your discussion section. So if your discussion is 8:30 on Monday, which is the first one we have, you need to have your quiz completed and submitted by 8:30. So Gradescope only logs for the instructors the last time that you opened and submitted the quiz. So what the other thing you want to avoid is once you've submitted it and your discussion starts, don't open it back up, even if you don't intend to change anything, because all we'll see is that you submitted it after discussion. We won't have any record of that previously. So once it's graded, which will be, after the Tuesday discussion sections meet, you'll be able to go back and see your answers, see what you missed, but you really do want to view that as a hard deadline. But alternatively, I do want to make clear, up until your deadline, you can open the quiz, change answers, submit as many times as you want. It really, like I said, just logs that last time. So I think a lot of students liked to start it really early so that they didn't forget to do it. And then if they had time, they might go back in and look back at things again before the discussion meets. So lecture quizzes are completely dependent on your discussion section in terms of when they're due, regardless of what it says on the Gradescope feature of the deadline. So the second graded component consists of problem sets. So I do have textbook problems on the syllabus that are suggested. I think it's a very good idea for you to get that practice. I will not be collecting the textbook homework. And in particular, I expect that doing the textbook homework will help you to do the problem sets. The problem sets are going to have problems that in general are more challenging than the textbook problems. And also they might combine several concepts. So that might be a little different from the textbook problems. I will post those each week. You'll get roughly a week to do them. And importantly, it always covers the previous week's material. Typically they're, I don't know, about 5 questions. Some of those questions could have many parts. And you don't want to put those off, but that category has the same due date for all students, regardless of your section. Those are going to be due by 11 p.m. on Thursdays. And generally I'll release each problem set maybe Thursday night or Friday morning. And importantly, I should have said about the lecture quizzes, while those are all open notes, open anything, the lecture quiz is the one category that I want you to do on your own. I don't want you to collaborate with people. If there's confusion, please do feel free to email me to say, is this what you meant? But I don't want you to work with your peers on that. For problem sets, I really encourage you to work with people. And in particular, I'm going to have lots of office hours, and I love it when students come to office hours. And last semester, I got to a point where I had 40 or 50 students in there at a time, and there's no capacity issues. So if you don't know how to do a problem on the problem set, I will work through it with you in office hours. So there should, as long as you have enough time, so set enough time aside to work on it, there shouldn't be a situation where you're really not doing well in the problem sets, because you can get that help. And that help can come from me. It can come from the help room. It can come from going to office hours for any of the discussion instructors. So make sure to do that. And like I said, it would be great if you wanted to work on that with your peers. I just ask that you write up your own solutions, so not like photocopy your friends' answers. So that's the second category. And then the third and final category are the discussion worksheets, which I talked quite a bit about in the other video on discussions. But I do want to emphasize that, again, for that category, your deadline or your due date depends on your discussion section. So everybody gets 3 days following their discussion section, and it's due at 11 p.m. 3 days later. So that means Monday, Wednesday discussions, we'll submit them on Thursdays and Saturdays. Whereas Tuesday, Thursday discussions, we'll submit them by Fridays and Sundays. So I discussed that more in the other video, but those are one per group. So those are your 3 categories. And so you really want to be just keeping an eye on your averages within each category so you can compare it to that 70%. I have a little blurb in here that I'm not going to go through that you can access on the course info sheet. Just some general notes about SU grading, because this is mandatory SU and lots of departments are doing this for their intro courses. Just some bullet points that hopefully are helpful for you. in terms of understanding what to take away from that. So I already referenced that you can access textbook problems that I really recommend for homework, but I'm not collecting those. There shouldn't be too much opportunity for academic dishonesty, but in this instance, it could happen with the lecture quizzes because you really are not allowed to ask for help or collaborate on those lecture quizzes. Academic dishonesty could also be a student skipping discussion and lying about submitting a short-term illness form, things like that. So just do be careful about that. That is important. And I know there's been a rise in academic dishonesty cases due to this remote learning structure. Not talking about my class in particular, but just at the university at large. And this last part here, I just want to point out that there are tons of opportunities to get help. And I think that it's really my job to make sure that you're aware of those and that you feel comfortable accessing those. I did get a lot of feedback from students last semester that said, oh, there were so many ways I could get help. And I love hearing that. I want you to feel that way. I want this to be an experience where you feel like you have a support system. So I have not set my office hours. I will. I'm going to advertise those. You can reach out to me individually. Every discussion section instructor is going to have office hours. And most of the TAs will probably staff our help room, which again is not yet set, but the help room is going to be something that you can drop in on that's typically open many hours Sunday through Thursday. And again, with any of these things, you could, besides the lecture quizzes, you could drop in there and get help from a whole wide range of people. So we really do structure this that we want to make sure that if you're really putting in the effort and you're seeking out that help, that we can be there to help you. So the biggest thing I'll say is not to be shy about it. There's no stigma in asking for help. And usually I find that the best students ask all kinds of questions, ask for help all the time. So don't worry about sounding stupid. Really push yourself to do that. And then finally, something that's not on this course info sheet, but I mentioned this in my intro video. I really do want to get to know as many of you as possible, even though we don't have this in-person class. So I will be sending out things, invitations to join me for coffee chats, which don't have to include coffee, but for lack of a better name, where I hope that we'll have informal, non-math related discussions, roughly about half hours, that you can talk with me and then also maybe a small group of your peers. So look out for that. And again, even if you're shy, I hope you'll join me for something like that.